There are few texts as haunted by a single character as A Song of Ice and Fire is haunted by Rhaegar Targaryen. A Game of Thrones begins 15 years after his death, but nearly every character thinks about him. Every word King Robert Baratheon speaks is cursed with rage towards him. Every time Eddard Stark thinks about his dead sister, Rhaegar is there, casting a shadow on the page. While there were certainly brewing issues within the Seven Kingdoms, Rhaegar Targaryen, in large part, caused Robert's rebellion. He abducted or ran away with Lyanna Stark, and the rest ran off to war. It was Rhaegar's fault that Lyanna died during childbirth. It was Rhaegar's fault that the Targaryen dynasty fell. It was Rhaegar's fault that his wife and children were brutally murdered. It was Rhaegar's fault that he had his chest caved in during single combat with Robert. Lyanna was 15 or 16 when she ran away with Rhaegar. He was around 22 or 23. Please suspend your judgment of me for a little bit, because I'm about to defend this. I'm sure I'll be seeing you in the comments. Go ahead and speak your mind. I'll probably respond too. But please hear me out. Open up your mind a little and watch the whole video. I've argued against all of the main particular arguments against Rhaegar and Lyanna's relationship in order. So please don't be hasty and watch the entire video to make sure I don't completely own your point before you make it. Before I begin this point, I think it's wise to clear something up. I am not making an "it's actually a phobophilia" argument here. I think it's wrong for a 22-year-old to get with a 15-year-old. What I'm trying to say here is, we should judge Rhaegar much less harshly for this than we would a modern-day 23-year-old. I think it is unwise to see these ages and immediately level a problematic rating, because that can encourage you to throw the whole thing out. There is a lot between these two. I think it's a shame to throw the baby out with the bathwater, or the Jon Snow out with the bed of blood. In Westeros, 16 is the age of majority. This is pretty universal. However, for teenage girls, the exacts get a little murky. While women are not considered women, or women grown, until 16 in Westeros, after a girl's first period, they are considered fit to be married and bedded, even if they aren't properly considered adult yet. The timeline around the tourney of Harrenhal and Robert's Rebellion is very unclear, and most of the characters' ages beyond just the year are very rarely known. Rhaegar and Lyanna very likely met at the tourney of Harrenhal, in the year of the Fall Spring, 281. The basics are that Lyanna probably entered the tourney as a mystery knight to humiliate some guys for Howland Reed, and then disappeared. The paranoid Aerys II had his son Rhaegar look for this mystery knight, the Knight of the Laughing Tree. This seems like when they probably met, because he apparently never found this knight, but suspiciously, upon winning the tourney, crowned Lyanna his Queen of Love and Beauty. Rhaegar might have had some weird dragon-dreamy things going on that all fell into place when he saw Lyanna was the mystery knight. That year, 281, Lyanna would have been 14 turning 15, so it's not certain which age she was. Rhaegar was 21 turning 22. While this age gap is certainly not great, I think it's a little unfair to criticize these characters in specific for it. Rhaegar was likely as much motivated by prophecy as attraction when it came to Lyanna, and Lyanna was well known for being strong and confident. In the main series, Edmure, who's somewhere in his mid to late 20s, marries Rosalind Frey, who is 16, by neither of their choice. And that's one of the series' more accidentally sweet couples. Tyrion, 26, marries a 13-year-old Sansa Stark. They don't consummate it, but he gets uncomfortably close to doing so. 16-year-old Jon Snow is persuaded into sex he didn't know he wanted with Ygritte, who is 19. Renly Baratheon and Loras Tyrell are 5 years apart in age, and have probably been lovers for a little while, meaning a 14 and 19 age gap isn't unreasonable to have occurred between them. And historically, Prince Viserys, son of Rhaenyra, later Viserys II, as a hostage, was married to Lara Rogare. They had their first son when she was 20, and Viserys was 13. I shouldn't even need to spell out Daenerys, who consistently ends up in intimate engagements with men at least twice her age. Even in real life, this kind of thing happened. King John of England, one of the more interesting Plantagenets, married Isabella of Angoulême in 1200, when she was 12 to 14, and he was 34. I'm not trying to be gratuitous. I'm simply trying to explain that 15 and 22 is not unusual for this series, nor is it very unusual for the historical period of development the world of Ice and Fire is at. Just as I think it's unreasonable to think poorly of Asha and Carl for not sitting down and talking about safe words before doing some kinky stuff, I think it's unfair to morally reflect too much of the problematic age gap on Lyanna and Rhaegar as people. I certainly see things wrong with this age gap. However, I don't think they would have in universe. We should assess this relationship as a whole. If you don't think Rhaegar is vindicated in whole or part by the context, then I think this is still not a very strong point. This part of the relationship is not amazing, but there are many other aspects of it. We have no reason to believe that either Lyanna or Rhaegar would have seen anything wrong with them hooking up, age-wise. The issue with that, in world, is something else entirely. Lyanna Stark was betrothed to Robert Baratheon, but she didn't choose to be. Her betrothal was part of what Barbary Dustin calls the Southron Ambitions, the alliance of Stark, Tully, Arryn, and Baratheon that took down Aerys II. The bad part of Rhaegar and Lyanna in the eyes of many in Westeros is the lack of consent. Not between the two of them, necessarily, but in the fact that Rhaegar did not attain Rickard Stark's permission. So when Robert Baratheon calls it kidnapping and rape, he's kinda correct. Not in that Rhaegar really forced her to go or brutalized her, but in that Rhaegar and Lyanna did not behave in a societally acceptable way. The Prince of Dragonstone messed around with Lord Rickard's property, without asking. In all of A Song of Ice and Fire, we never get an example, in the series or the history, of a woman choosing to wed herself. Except maybe Lyanna, depending on whether or not you believe that they, got married and stuff. The examples where they actually end up where they want to go, my mind goes to Alysanne and Alyssa, ignore that their preferred spouses were also their brothers, are at times when the male ruler and head of household, in both of these cases King Jaehaerys I, allowed it. Marriages like this are only ever allowed to occur when the man allows it, not ever because the woman has chosen it. The father allowing his daughter to wed for love is being kind. He doesn't have to give his permission. Women are not intelligent, independent beings. They are at most political tools to forge alliances and produce children to these lords. If we're putting some mind towards what we call statutory rape in our world, in Westeros, with the age gap, we better put some mind towards marital rape. Women are expected to have sex with their husband. Put a less polite way, but more honest, if a woman is married to someone she does not like and does not want to have sex with, that is years and years of marital rape. Lyanna was betrothed to Robert Baratheon, a man who cannot be trusted in any circumstances not to commit marital rape. Robert Baratheon has gone overglazed and underhated for a very long time. Game of Thrones, the show, made him a little too fun and a little too sympathetic. I will admit that Robert Baratheon is, in a very toxic, masculine, meathead sort of way, a cool guy, especially when younger. He's strong. He kills guys he doesn't like. He has sex with whoever he wants. He has a big hammer and is 6'6". He's cool. We all know that Robert is also debaucherous, but I think a few of us could use a reminder on just how degenerate his behavior is. Robert Baratheon was 18 or 19 at the tourney of Harrenhal, and was already the drinking contest sort of alcoholic. Robert is such a bad drinker later in life that it contributed to his poor health and his excessive weight. Cersei and Lancel hardly have to even try to kill him. With a little guidance, he gets so drunk he dies from a boar ripping his belly open. Robert is also an extreme whoremonger. To say he's addicted to sex would be an understatement. The guy is a gooner. Based on Maggie the Frog's other correct predictions about Cersei's child count, Robert had 16 bastards. By the time of his betrothal to Lyanna, sometime before the tourney, he already had a bastard daughter in the Vale. Robert evaded getting captured by Jon Connington in the Battle of the Bells by hiding in the Peach, a brothel, where he left another daughter. He definitely fathered a bastard on his cousin in the Stormlands, for sure, and 2 confirmed Crownlanders. He also left 2 in the Westerlands, according to Littlefinger, who Cersei had killed. He's got a stone, a rivers, a storm, a hill, a waters, and maybe even a flowers or 2 if some are to be believed. Knowing Robert, he probably left one during the Greyjoy Rebellion, and he could have made one when he travels north. The man might have completed the whole set. I shouldn't have to explain that prostitution in the world of Ice and Fire isn't exactly the most consensual thing ever. We know for certain that Westerosi sex workers are very often not women grown. And even if they are, brothel keepers wouldn't exactly wait for their name day. Jane Poole, for example, got put into the Littlefinger pimp pipeline at like 11. Robert is also a terrible husband. I know Cersei is a horrible person, but that doesn't mean he should beat her. And that's ignoring how his years of marital rape and abuse most certainly made Cersei into a worse person. Robert's most pathetic trait is his fantasy, idealized love for Lyanna. His love for Lyanna is love for the unattainable, posthumous image of Lyanna in his mind. He doesn't even remember what she looked like. They didn't even know each other. If they actually married, there's no reason that his abuse wouldn't have also come for her. In fact, Lyanna kinda thinks so too. Robert will never keep to one bed, Lyanna had told him at Winterfell, on the night long ago when their father had promised her hand to the young Lord of Storm's End. I hear he has gotten a child on some girl in the Vale. Ned had held the baby in his arms. He could scarcely deny her, nor would he lie to his sister. But he had assured her that what Robert did before their betrothal was of no matter, that he was a good man, and true, who would love her with all his heart. Lyanna had only smiled. Love is sweet, dearest Ned, but it cannot change a man's nature. In that same chapter, Ned goes to see an infant bastard of Robert's, whose mother, a prostitute, is repeatedly described as a girl. So young he doesn't even want to ask her age. Just before getting ganked by Jaime Lannister, while talking to Littlefinger about bastards and how many Robert has, for the first time in years, he found himself remembering Rhaegar Targaryen. He wondered if Rhaegar had frequented brothels. Somehow, he thought not. That doesn't sound like thoughts about the man who repeatedly abused your sister. I leave it to you to make a judgment on each man's nature, and whether or not it can change. While I can see some ground to these other issues, as far as Elia Martell's honor goes, I see basically nothing wrong with Rhaegar's actions. I laugh in your face if you make this point. It is common to see the "he left Elia to die in King's Landing while running around with a teenager" take. While the running away and responsibility are the next section of this video, how is he supposed to defend Elia during the sack of King's Landing? He was dead. Also, you might be offended if your husband did this. Some of the other lords might think it's shameful for you, but you're not Dornish. I have used hedging language so far, to the best of my ability, but this I am certain of. He doesn't seem to have told her. He definitely told her. We see the scene. In the House of the Undying, when Dany sees him speaking to Elia with a newborn Aegon, Viserys was her first thought the next time she paused, but a second glance told her otherwise. The man had her brother's hair, but he was taller, and his eyes were a dark indigo rather than lilac. Aegon, he said to the woman nursing a newborn babe in a great wooden bed. What better name for a king? Will you make a song for him? The woman asked. He has a song, the man replied. He is the prince that was promised, and his is the song of ice and fire. He looked up when he said it, and his eyes met Dany's, and it seemed as if he saw her standing beyond the door. There must be one more, he said, though whether he was speaking to her or the woman in the bed, she could not say. The dragon has 3 heads. There must be one more? What is this if not Rhaegar telling Elia, who can't have any more kids, that he will be having another child? There is no indication that Rhaegar planned to annul his marriage to Elia, or did not care about his children. He was convinced, actually, that they were 2/3 of the prince that was promised. On the issue of wedding, there is some indication, as theorized by many, that Rhaegar did marry Lyanna in some sort of way. It seems most likely in a weirwood wedding on the Isle of Faces. That seems to, fit the most. In that way, this marriage would have been legitimate to both of them. And this would make Jon not really a bastard, even if he will never legitimately be able to press a claim on the Iron Throne. I do believe that this would, at once, save him from having to, do some annulment bullshit, and also add that extra complexity to Jon's character when he realizes that he is not really a bastard. A lot of the criticism of Rhaegar rests on his irresponsibility. He should have known better than to let all this happen. And that ties into the claim that whatever consent there may have been at the start of their relationship would have certainly died when Lyanna learned her brother and father had been killed by Aerys. But that should be based on them knowing. Did they? I'm not convinced. I will link David Lightbringer's 2 videos about the pair in the description and in the top of the screen right now. He goes into much further detail about the textual evidence of their relationship and how everything in the text sets it up as romantic. I, however, am focused on the arguments against Rhaegar. But if you want to know more about, what we can speculate about their marriage, or about where they were going for all the time, or some of the timeline, go ahead and watch those after this. Rhaegar and Lyanna ran away somewhere around Harrenhal, probably went to the Isle of Faces, and then presumably down to Dorne. Jon may not have been conceived at the Tower of Joy. We can only know that Rhaegar and Lyanna were there when Gerald Hightower showed up, which I'll get into in a moment. But it is probably a period of at least 10 months that we're talking about, maybe even up to 16. That isn't a short time. However long they spent on the Isle of Faces, assuming they did go, they wouldn't have known anything from the outside world. They may have spent up to half or a little more of the time from the abduction to the Battle of the Trident on this isle. Hell, Jon may have even been conceived there. The point is, however long this was, by the time they left, the war was probably already in full swing. Keep in mind, this is just the four of them. Rhaegar, Lyanna, and Rhaegar's two best friends / Kingsguard, Oswell Went and Arthur Dayne. Was it irresponsible for them to run away? Sure. But was there anything they could do about it by the time they probably found out? Definitely not. What was Lyanna supposed to do? Go back to the marriage she's trying to escape in the first place? And support the side of a war which will kill the guy she actually likes and put the guy she doesn't on the throne, let alone make her queen? At this point, there is nothing Rhaegar can effectively do for Elia and his other children. Do you think he could just stroll up to the Red Keep with a pregnant Lyanna, Arthur, and Oswell and get a warm welcome? Probably not. Aerys was already paranoid about Rhaegar overthrowing him. His only political bargaining chip against his well-loved, popular son was the fact that his wife and children were his hostages in the Red Keep. Rhaegar showing up wouldn't do anything. Rhaegar and Lyanna, at some point, probably pretty late in the war by now, get to the Tower of Joy. A lot of people like to talk about Lyanna being a hostage at the Tower of Joy, but we only know that it's hostage-like in Ned's memory, once Gerald Hightower is there. David Lightbringer does bring up a very likely scenario for this weird lineup being at the Tower of Joy. We know Rhaegar was close to Arthur and Oswell. He was not close to Gerald. The very likely speculation goes, Aerys wanted a Rhaegar to fight the war, so he sends his trusted Lord Commander to the Tower of Joy to force Rhaegar to go back to King's Landing. Not only is Elia a good piece of leverage to get him to leave in the first place, but now Gerald can hold Lyanna hostage, forcing Rhaegar to stay gone until the war is over. Rhaegar goes back to King's Landing, says some disloyal shit to Jaime Lannister, rides out to meet Robert at the Trident, and gets his ass killed. At no point here does Rhaegar have an actual opportunity to effectively protect either of his wives. They're securities for his obedience, and he has no reason to believe that any particular harm would come to either of them. Lyanna is guarded by 3 Kingsguard in the middle of nowhere, and Elia is in the most fortified place in the entire continent. The only point where he could have meaningfully done something is before he ran away with Lyanna. But at that point, why would either of them think that Brandon and Rickard would get themselves killed like this? This may be a little bit controversial, but Brandon Stark's actions were absolutely irresponsible and irrational. As irresponsible, if not more, than Rhaegar and Lyanna. When he learned that Lyanna was missing with Rhaegar, instead of asking his brother, who definitely knew, he runs away from his marriage to King's Landing, where he demands Rhaegar, who isn't even there, to come out and die. What did he expect to happen? Arresting Rickard and Brandon is like the most rational thing Aerys ever did. You bust into your king's house and shout about killing his son. You're just asking to be brutally executed, man. Is it irresponsible that neither Rhaegar or Lyanna made it more clear that they mutually decided to do this? Sure. Could Rhaegar have assured that Elia wasn't a hostage first? I guess. But I find the argument that Rhaegar should have known how bad things were going to get unconvincing. Rhaegar had his mind on much larger things. Rhaegar 100% believed that his son with Lyanna would be the third head of the dragon, the third part of the prince that was promised. This is literally the Song of Ice and Fire. I read the quote earlier. Ice, Stark, and fire, Targaryen. Rhaegar was a romantic. The guy plays the fucking harp. Come on. Does it sound kind of psychotic to explain his motivations? Absolutely. I need to have illegal sex with this teenage girl to make a prophecy baby? That sounds insane. But I think we have to exonerate him a little bit. He was fucking correct. At least partially. Jon Snow is definitely part of Azor Ahai, or the prince that was promised. and will definitely play the primary role in stopping a new long night. However creepy or imperfect you want to believe this relationship to be, as wrong as it sounds, Rhaegar and Lyanna having a child had to happen to save the world. His prophecy baby talk was true. If having sketchy sex, causing a war, and plenty of other unforeseen consequences, including his own death, are what it takes to save the world, I don't see why I should take the moral high ground away from Rhaegar. Thematically, Rhaegar is not a villain. He's a tragic hero. He's the prince that was promised before the story began, the chivalrous, honorable, handsome prince who everyone loved and who is good at everything. He is the hero of the entire story. His actions, good and bad, create the conditions to save the world. And some people don't want to admit that. I simply do not understand what is so hard to compute for some people about this. Is a 16 and 23-year-old age gap good on its own? No. Did they do some irresponsible things? Yes. But still, do I think both characters, Rhaegar and Lyanna, seem to have been mostly motivated by good? Absolutely. Rhaegar Targaryen is one of my favorite fictional characters of all time. I love that he's this shadow on the wall, that he haunts every single page. I love that he is the hero and that he's already dead. Rhaegar is such a well-done character. He is perfectly crafted. He is the epitome of how no one is ever right how they think they are in Ice and Fire. But Rhaegar was right about enough of it to make a difference. That's enough about Rhaegar. I've spent too much time of this video on him. More time than I think he needs. The worst thing about this focus on the problematic nature of Rhaegar and Lyanna's relationship is that we end up losing Lyanna in the process. Even those who frame their opposition as Lyanna deserved so much better fall into this. It's a common tendency, especially concerning a fictional world which is so patriarchal. Everything about a situation is singularly attributable to the man. All of the good of their union, all of the bad. It's all on Rhaegar. Lyanna can't share any of the fault in it. She must be an agency-free victim. When Rhaegar and Lyanna run off, it's Rhaegar running off with Lyanna or kidnapping her. It's not Rhaegar and Lyanna. I think it's wiser to see this as a powerful moment of choice from Lyanna, who otherwise has none, than a necessarily predatory moment of Rhaegar's. I think we can sympathize with Lyanna a lot. We can understand why she would rebel against the gender norms of her society, and we can sympathize with her probable decision to run away with Rhaegar instead of sit around like property and marry Robert. The story becomes far more powerful when we focus on Jon's heritage from this perspective. Jon looks like Lyanna. He acts like Lyanna. We already know Lyanna. We know that she was fearless and stood up for the things that she thought were right. We already know her son. While Rhaegar haunts every single page and is endlessly fascinating because we know such tantalizingly little, Lyanna is compelling because we know what she was. She was a good person and deserves more recognition. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and a subscribe and a positive comment. And if you absolutely disagree with me and hate me and think I'm a horrible person, you should also leave a comment. But make sure to like the video too. I usually don't make a Song of Ice and Fire videos, but I may make some in the future, along with my normal scattering of vaguely associated topics. Right now I have a Q&A going until I have 500 subscribers, so if you have a question, then go ahead and find that YouTube post.